I just watched this match of Hogan versus Goldberg because I was interested to check it out, and I wanted to make like a review of going to the show and what the match was all about, watching it back today. But when he won the title, he was on an undefeated streak of 107-0. For much of that streak, he was fighting guys that were jobber quality stars on Nitro and on Thunder was the other show on pay-per-views. Like the biggest, rivalries that he was involved with on his way to the top was like Steve Mongo Michael, because they were both football guys. He had a small rivalry with Raven when he won the United States title, but he was always just that guy that was just like, we don't really need to make a program for him. He'll just, go out there. The fans will cheer for him, and he'll win his match. Let's make sure that we get, the big programs for all the other guys that are there because he's already getting a reaction, and that's about it. I can remember 1998. School was out because it was the middle of July. Me and my buddy bought tickets for this. Honestly, about a month in advance. We went to our local Publix, which is a grocery store, and we bought the tickets there. And we were all hyped up to go to this show. For some reason, I can remember he almost wasn't able to go, and he was my ride. This was the first wrestling event that I ever went to alone, and I don't think it would have been that big of a deal, because in 1998, I would have been 17 years old. But I didn't tell my mom I was going to the show until after I got home. It was sort of like one of those things where, I'll ask for forgiveness instead of asking for permission because we didn't get home from the Georgia Dome, even though we lived in Atlanta, until like 1 o'clock. If I can remember, it was definitely after midnight. It was closer to 1. I can remember because I remember I got a little talking to about letting her know where I was going to be. But it wasn't the hugest ordeal because, I was 17 years old at the time. But this was just like, if you watch the whole Nitro, which I don't think is available unless you have it on like a bootleg DVD, which I'm sure I have it tucked away somewhere. I just didn't want to dig it out. I can remember off the top of my head, though, that honestly, this was a 3-hour show. And I don't know why I was able to sit through 3-hour shows and never complain about them back then. But now, maybe because you're not able to switch channels like with the other thing. Like if Nitro sucked ass, for the first hour you had to live up with it. But I mean, like, if it was during the prime hours that Raw was on, if anything sucked, you just flipped over. Maybe Raw needs some competition. Maybe it wasn't a great idea that TNA packed up their bags and left on us. But I honestly think that you were able to sit through those 3-hour shows back then, but nothing happened on this show. If you watched the weeks before, if you didn't live in Atlanta, nobody fucking knew about this match unless you read the dirt sheets. This was a straight up dark match, like what they want you to go. Like SmackDown has a lot of dark matches all the time. Raw matches, everybody goes to Raw because it's fucking live TV. But everybody knows that SmackDown, you're very lucky if you get one of the big stars. Like they had CM Punk on there on Friday night, so he was at the Tuesday taping, and John Cena's not normally there. But if they're going to some small town in the middle of nowhere, they'll act like there's going to be some big match to draw you to come in when they show you the commercials on TV, or they have the flyers around town, or maybe even they put a poster up at the Ticketmaster where you're going to go buy your tickets up, saying like, I don't know, fucking John Cena versus Big Show, Steel Cage. And they go out there at the end, after the taping's all over, and they go out there and have a 4-minute match to send everybody home happy that John Cena wins in a Steel Cage match. But that's basically what this was going to be. Goldberg, the hometown boy, was to take on Hulk Hogan in what was the world heavyweight champion at the time. So it was like Goldberg's first shot at the main event, and it was supposed to draw fans to the Georgia Dome. I know everybody went to the Georgia Dome at WrestleMania 27, or they watched it on TV, or they have the DVD now. But the way the Georgia Dome used to be set up back in the day was they used to run half of the dome. Like where you would put the 50-yard line, they would put the big old frickin' tarp they'd pull it all the way across, and that's where they'd set up the set. And the backstage would be the other side of the football field, and they'd fill up the other side of the arena, and they'd put some floor seats down on the floor to fill up where the ramp was, so it wasn't be like you'd be like, hey, they only have three quarters of the arena filled up. They made it look really, really full. And for a wrestling show, if it wasn't for going to WrestleMania in 27 and seeing the whole fucking arena, except for where the end zone was, where they built the stage over there, full, it was the biggest show that I had ever been to. And it was still, even though I've been to WrestleMania, it was one of the craziest atmospheres I've ever been to. I always give a little bit of nudge to the first ECW house show that I ever went to, because it was in the Gwinnett Civic Center in a much smaller arena. Not the, they tore down this Gwinnett Civic Center and built the other Gwinnett Civic Center that they do some SmackDown shows at, and they did a pay-per-view back in, I think they did like Armageddon 2004, 2005. One of those shows was there, and that was a new arena they built on top of the old arena. But except for that, I mean, this place was 99% Goldberg fans. Everybody brought signs. Everybody brought shirts. There was some sporadic NWO Hollywood Hogan fans in there like myself, and I don't know if anybody's ever been to a show with me, or just you can tell by watching my videos that I make when I go to the shows. I'm a very loud person. I get very into watching wrestling, and I don't want to say that I get to the point of I make people embarrassed around me, but I let people know that I'm there. And I go to some baseball games, and people like to think that I'm the drunkest guy in the crowd, and I don't really typically drink when I go to things like this that much, because I have to drive home from them. But every time there was a Goldberg chant, Goldberg, Goldberg, like they did back in the day, I would do the freaking Hogan chant. I would just chant, Hogan, Hogan. But somehow in between, I think it was actually on Thursday, which is very late for a Monday. Doug Dillinger came on to Thunder, which nobody watched. So it didn't really help out them with the number at all. But I'm sure the word spread throughout the internet and the dirt sheets and everything like that throughout the day. And just word of mouth from the small amount of fans that did watch it, that could tip people off that it was going to be there. But Nitro always had the advantage, because they started at 8 and Raw didn't start till 9. That they'd be able to tell people, the wrestling fans that would come in and tune in an hour early, that they were having this match and it was going to be the main event. But anyways, Doug Dillinger comes out there and changes his mind. It's no longer going to be a dark match to sell tickets. It's actually going to be on TV. If you ever go on and you watch the freaking Hulk Hogan interviews and jazz like that, he's the guy who says that it was all his idea to put the belt on the Goldberg. He can tell how hot he was. But the flip side of the story was that Hogan beat Goldberg because he wanted the return on the end. He wanted to be the first guy to beat Goldberg. Everybody sort of agreed to this, even though it never really played out, and Kevin Nash was the guy that got to beat him. I think it's Starrcade later in the year. Sort of the Goldberg title run. Once they put the belt on him, he got real hot, but he sort of fizzled out because he didn't really have any tough competition. You can tell by watching the match, which plays into the review in a little bit. But Hogan was already booked to fight in a mixed tag. It was going to be Hogan and Rodman against DDP and Karl Malone. Kurt Hennig was already involved in a feud over the United States Championship with Goldberg. So, like when you go to your first pay-per-view as your new champion and you're fighting a guy like Kurt Hennig, which is a great wrestler, but he was nowhere in the main event scene. He was definitely a hardcore mid-carder with that United States Championship. Throughout his whole WCW run, you're going to look a little weird. It took a few months before he was battling guys like Sting and DDP and other guys. Once we finally got down to business, this match is only about 9 minutes. The atmosphere was crazy. Everybody was going wild. NWO threw some pranks in during the show, saying that Goldberg wasn't going to be able to get his title shot until he beat a mystery person who ended up being Scott Hall, who returned. He'd not been in WCW due to some, I guess you can say, family and self problems. He hadn't been there in about 3 months, so he actually got a pretty good pop that came out there. Goldberg destroyed him like he was no man's business, so the match was finally on and set for the main event. The whole match itself is like 17 minutes long, but the actual match part of it is only about 8 minutes. They definitely, knew to control Goldberg and not really just overuse him. The matches is a lot of headlocks, from Hogan and from Goldberg. Not much a real battling action, I guess you can say. Goldberg sells a few punches from Hogan, which is the normal thing. Hogan uses the strap on him. The match is going, and it is what it is. It's nothing really spectacular. I would definitely put it in my top 10 Hulk Hogan matches, which is a good idea for a video I should make someday. But just from the atmosphere, but the match itself is nothing really that great. Kurt Hennig makes his way down to the ring like he's going to interfere and help Hogan keep the belt. DDP comes down with Karl Malone, who was in Atlanta for the night for no apparent reason other than to be on WCW Nitro. He just simply walks up behind Hennig, spins him around, gives him a diamond cutter, and DDP and Malone, the place erupts. After that, Goldberg really just hits the spear out of nowhere, hits him with a jackhammer, which, honestly takes forever for him to pick him up. You can definitely see that he's living in the moment and in front of his hometown crowd. Jackhammers him down, pins him, and takes the strap. It was fun back in those days to go to the crowds because the WCW crowds were very interactive. Everybody threw shit in the ring, no matter what happened at the end of Nitro or at the end of the pay-per-view. We tried to be, we were sitting in the last row of the hundreds. We weren't in the decks. We were on, on that little incline, the risers that rise up. We were sitting in the last seats in front of the freaking things. We tried to throw things in the ring that we had never seen before to see what was going to happen. We threw bags of pre-made bags of sugar that we had made in Ziploc bags, pre-made bags of flour. We wanted something that would hit the ring and sort of make a poof of smoke, like something was going on. I don't know if we were like hinting at the freaking Warrior coming later in the next year, or what we were trying to do, but that was a little bit of something. And maybe I think Warrior came in '98. I think he came in October at Halloween Havoc. But we also threw toilet paper, threw some jars of, not jars, but plastic jugs of mustard, so when they hit, you'd see that of yellow, which is actually the only thing that hit the ring that I threw, and you can see it at the very end of during the celebration. Not my proudest moment as a wrestling fan that I did it, but definitely one of the biggest events that I ever went to, and very awesome. Jim and I still ask me to this day, almost weekly, about what it was like to be in there, and it was an awesome event to go to.